slash grades for everything except the Vygotsky response, because that's when I just said, like, I'm done. Okay? All right. So if you do not have a grade for something as of, like, last night, check and see what's going on. So either you didn't submit, or I didn't get it, or something was wrong with the file or something, okay? So go on and check. If you have a 0, remember that's a kick in the butt score, not a now you're dead score. Okay, so that just means get it done. That's all. Okay? Generally, the portfolios, you guys did really, really well. I'm going to post a couple of very good examples in case you want some to work from. Generally, the feedback that I end up having to give on the portfolios, and maybe I need to kind of talk about it more clearly, a lot of times it's not quite clear if you have had the students turn the work in previously and you graded it and given it back, or if it's brand new in the portfolio and you've never seen it before. And it makes a huge difference, okay, because your assignment description and your rubric have to be completely different if you're grading all of this for the very, very first time than if you're just saying, check, 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 this is all here, right? So that was one comment I did give a bit, was that you need to be really clear about that so that everybody knows what's going on and we have the right rubrics happening, okay? Otherwise, we did swimmingly. You also got feedback from me this weekend on the Unit 1 quiz. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and take a look. I gave feedback on some of the commonly missed questions, but then I also just kind of showed you, when you do give a test to your students, what do you do afterwards? And so that's partly what the video is I actually go through and show you what the data looks like on the back end of Canvas when you give a quiz, and how you can use that data then to be like, ooh, a quarter of my students missed that question, that's something we should probably revisit, or wow, I must have miskeyed that, or there are too many really good distractors, meaning wrong answers, right? And I need to work on that. So it's really important that you use that data, and that's why we have the how section on each of the assessment inventory things, is how are you going to use that assessments data to then improve instruction or work with students. And so I showed you how to do it with a test. And it's an entertaining video, right, Bill?
Yep.
Because I'm like, there are people dying in the background. So my husband was playing a video game. That was disgusting. He's old enough to choose what video games to play. All right. So hopefully you've done some preparation today and you kind of understand what these papers are that I've passed out to you, and we're going to work with them today. Most importantly, we really need to think today about identity development and adolescence, right? This is it. This is the big time. And it actually correlates with their frontal lobe development, right? Because all of a sudden their frontal lobes are turning on and hypotheticals and abstract things are possible, right? So it all kind of goes with Piaget's theory, and it goes with brain development. Because if hypotheticals are possible, then what are my possible hypotheticals, right? Could I be this? Could I do that? Where might I live? What could I do, right? And so it's kind of overwhelming and scary. Some of what I asked you to read was about the suicide and depression rates and drug use rates and things in this area. And that's something I want you to be very, very aware of, because especially our suicide attempt and success rates they're not okay. They're really not okay in this area, all right? I've got a video for us to watch today from Lone Peak High School. How many of you know much about Lone Peak? Want to share some info? Kyle, share some info that you know about Lone Peak.
It's a very affluent area. We
Yeah.
also have a very high suicide rate.
Absolutely. Which populations are most heavily affected by adolescent suicide, if we talk about socioeconomics?
Isn't like the very low middle class is very affected?
Yep, the very, very low and the very, very high.
Well, doesn't Lone Peak have both those demographics?
Yeah.
A lot of my buddies went there, and it's very affluent, but also the
Yep.
So there's a huge rift between.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting. The middle class tends to be a bit of a happy little bubble people are able to live in for the most part. Yes, of course, we have kids that are coming from the lower to middle class that are still struggling. But when we get into upper middle class and upper class, and when we get down into lower socioeconomic areas, we see huge differences. Why? And I mean, we can figure out in the lower populations, right? It's a survival thing, and it gets exhausting, frankly. Okay, why the affluent areas?
Isolation.
Okay, isolation, what do you mean by that?
That's kind of like perceived isolation where they feel alone, sort of thing.
Okay.
Where they're so removed from everybody else.
Good. What were you saying, Caitlin? Pressure. Huge amounts of pressure on these kids, right? We have the highest also rates of things like eating disorders and anxiety disorders among kids that are in the upper socioeconomic status because there's so much pressure on them. Okay?
Isn't drug use also very high?
Yeah, absolutely. And the drug use in those two different populations looks very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which drugs are the higher affluent populations using?
Prescriptions.
Prescriptions, yeah, for sure. Lower, we're getting things like methamphetamines, right? And those are our two biggest drugs here in Utah. Methamphetamine use is through the roof, prescription drugs through the roof, okay? So those are the two we really struggle with, and our teens are they're really having a hard time right now, guys. And so that, again, is just, for me, one of those amazing reasons to be a secondary educator, is that we have an opportunity to step in and intervene and to help these kids realize that they have somebody, right? One of the ways we do that is through identity, okay? If we look at kids that drop out of school, and if we look at kids that attempt suicide, we have a really common factor, and that is that predominantly they feel like they have no sense of belonging or identity at school. Why bother going? Why should I be there? Nobody cares that I'm there, sense of belonging. School's not for me. There's nothing there that interests me. I don't care about what we're doing. It's not going to be part of who I am later. Okay, those are the kids that we need to work with and help them see that school is definitely a part of their identity, whatever they want to do, right? Okay, so this video that was created by some teachers at Lone Peak. Did any of you go to Lone Peak? Excellent. So Max may know some of these. Teach us. These are the good teachers. Okay, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. She's like, I went there. Those were the good teachers. Okay.
We're doing amazing.
All right, now I will put that board back up in a little bit if we need to, but if you went to the TEDx event here at UVU, you may have seen two of these teachers, the one on the top left and the top right. They actually spoke at the TEDx event and presented part of this for us. One of them is he was a grad student of ours here at UVU, so.
To leave. Did she say she's putting it on there? I don't know.
Yesterday, I saw you in the dairy section.
I saw you at Boston Fitness.
I saw you a while back in the checkout line.
I saw you in Nauvoo, Illinois. I saw you at the San Diego Wild Animal Park.
I was picking up milk, and you were picking up eggs. I think you thought I was judging your cart. But when you saw me, you stopped. Because it's weird to see your teachers at the store. Like, we don't drink milk. Like, we don't eat eggs. You don't see us as real people. Which explains why you dashed behind the 2 leaders and tried to blend in. You see us as tyrants, dictators, rule makers, and phone takers. Mr. Prince of Lone Peak, we see you. We see you push open doors, darkness, and hope. We see you in halls and seats and every other better getting and B, perfect day.
We see you.
With your head down, headphones in, heading out to your car so you don't have to eat lunch alone. We see you. Flat brim, blonde hair, undress coated, student body sweater, lone guitar, PDA, couple of kids, searching. You are more than your outfit. You are more than your makeup. You're more than whatever side of the night they let you sit on. You are more than the sport you play and the one you don't. More than a GPA, ACT, AP, honors, regular classification on a college application, regardless of whether you say. We don't know everything, although sometimes we act like we do. We see the cars you drive, but we don't know the roads you take to get home. We see your eyes, silent hurricane, but we don't see what's behind your vision. The meteorologists predict thunderstorms, but you don't watch the weather anymore, because that forecast never seems to change.
We see you.
We remember.
I was told I'd never play college basketball.
My freshman year, I was the new kid in school and spent my lunches wandering the halls.
I earned a C- on my first calculus test.
My son came to my husband and I and told us he was a heroin addict.
We've been there. You guys go 80s dancing on Friday nights.
And so did we.
In the 80s.
Depending on the day, we're still there, because battlefields will grow like wildflowers everywhere you go.
I was rejected to be an EFY counselor 3 years in a row. I struggled with depression.
They told me I wasn't smart enough to attend a Division I school because I got a 15 on my ACT.
When I was 21, I had to repeat 7th through 12th grade.
Maybe you feel worthless. Maybe you feel nothing at all. And so you weren't born knowing 5 languages or playing 8 instruments or being so charismatic that AP Calculus calls you just to hang out. So you can't touch the rim, and you haven't had your first kiss. And we marked you absent yesterday, even though you were sitting in the front row. We just want you to know, this is not the end. High school was never supposed to be the end.
It's too early to draw the final conclusion.
This proof is incomplete.
This is not your denouement.
It's not the 4th quarter. This is not the curtain call.
I ended up working for EFY for 5 summers and was actually asked to be on their commercial.
I now have 2 master's degrees, and I'll start working on a PhD next year.
I love riding my motorcycle. I love going to concerts and singing with 1,000 other people at the top of my lungs.
I like watching the kids' face light up after they've worked really hard and they get the grade that they wanted.
It's a little known fact that when you apply for adulthood, happiness reviews your resume, looking for at least one bad day, if not 14 in a row, so that you and the moon both know what it's like to fight back to full. See you fight the fighters that don't have fists. Sometimes knocked down, but never knocked out. It's one of our favorite things about you. This is us cheering you on. Because life goes 12 rounds if you're lucky, and we're all bound to get a little bloody. Our hearts have always carried more than 2 liters. So come out from behind those drinks. I don't care if all that you have is go-gurt in your cart. Some days it may feel easier to just throw in the towel, to quit, to give up. But this is us asking, telling, begging to take that towel, to take your life and wring it out, shoved down to the bottom of your backpack and don't ever bring it out. You can do this. You can do this.
We believe in you.
And when they call your name at graduation,
We'll call you patience. We'll call you courage.
We'll call you hope and say we saw it all. Congratulations. You did it. And you can do it too.
Okay. So our purpose today is try to figure out how we can do, maybe not something quite so dramatic. I personally am not a really powerful beat poet, but to be able to help them be seen, feel like they're seen, explore all the aspects of their identity that they're trying to figure out, right? And just know that that's okay. That's what we're here for today, all right? So, how many of you like fantasy fiction? Wow. Okay. So Patrick Rothfuss is okay. He's kind of the king of the genre right now, if you ask me. And he's from here. So The Name of the Wind, beautiful piece of poetry. I mean, it's gorgeous. But this quote, when I saw this in this book, kind of floored me because it is exactly what we've talked about with regard to how the neural networks form in our heads, right? That they are shaped completely by experience and belief, right? So, let's see. Mikkel, read that for us.
It's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head. Always, all the time. That story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story.
Okay. So what we believe about ourselves becomes the story that we tell about ourselves in our head, right? Which then directs what we see in the world, what we're willing to try, what we're willing to do. We become whatever that story is that we believe about ourselves. Okay? And what we're trying to help kids do is shape what that story is going to be, but the problem is, as this new world of possibility opens up to them, it's not like you have identity or you don't, right? I'm kind of old at this point. Don't tell. I don't have all this figured out, right? There's no way. So when you think about identity and all the parts of ourselves that we have to figure out, there's a lot in there, okay? And while I might have my career figured out, maybe I don't have my social identity figured out. Or maybe I don't have my political ideologies figured out. So there's a lot of places that I'm still exploring, and I'm way older than high school, right? So high school, all of these are kind of up for grabs, all right? So we're going to help them through that, and there are these two theories that we're working with today that are going to help us do that. We're going to start with the big grid. So this is James Marcia's identity states. Or identity statuses, if you did your prep, right? So somebody tell me where this theory came from and what it's trying to do. Did come from Canada. Well done. All right. So what was Marcia trying to do when he came up with this theory?
Is he just trying to show that like our choices impact who we become?
Excellent. Okay, so that's the first big piece. Our choices impact who we end up becoming. Okay, he was trying to elaborate on Erikson's theory. So Erikson's whole theory is about identity, figuring it out. But Marcia was the one that said, wait, stop. There is no one whole identity. There's all these different aspects, and we can be in a different state or status in any aspect of our identity at any time, right? So if I take a look at this list right now, with career, I have identity achievement. And what that means specifically is that I've explored my options and then made a commitment to something. And that's really, really important, okay? How is that different from identity foreclosure?
In identity foreclosure, you blindly accept a role that's been given to you either by like a family business or a husband.
Good. Yeah, so maybe my parent, or maybe my mom was a teacher, my grandma was a teacher, therefore I'm going to be a teacher. I don't even look at the other options. Maybe we have a family business and it's just assumed, right? I'm going to take over the farm, or I'm going to take over the business. So with regard to career, those are really good examples of this identity foreclosure. What do you think the levels of life satisfaction 30 years down the road are between somebody who went through identity achievement and somebody who went through identity foreclosure?
Identity foreclosure is going to be a lot lower.
Yeah. There's always going to be that what if question out there, right? Midlife crisis, absolutely. And that's not to say that we can't have midlife crises, whatever, if we go through identity achievement, right? We might have explored all the options, committed to something, and we loved it for 20 or 30 years, and then we're like, I need something different at this point in my life because I'm a different person now. That's entirely possible too, but it's much higher when we have the foreclosure because they're always saying, what if I had tried that other thing? what if I had looked at my options way back when? What would my life be like? Okay? So if you think about political ideologies, how many of us just inherited the political ideologies or the religious beliefs or the career expectations or the where we went to college of our parents? Right? So identity foreclosure is pretty common. And it leads to less satisfaction. It's also going to lead to less motivation in our classrooms. Right? Because if the kids already know what they're doing for career, which is amazing when they're 14 years old, then why bother paying attention in chemistry? Right? Unless chemistry happens to relate to what their career is that they're planning on. Okay. Now the other two states, identity diffusion. Tell me about that one. Please.
They're not looking for options. Like,
yeah.
And I just have, they have a sense of choice, but they're not really looking.
Yeah. So they're just like, whatever. I'm not interested. I don't care. How many of us are like that with politics? Right? Okay, and that's kind of not a good thing to be, right? It's never good to just say, I'm not interested in figuring out who I am. Yeah.
I had a drama teacher who discussed this with us, believe it or not. And
awesome.
All I remember is he called identity diffusion being a jellyfish in a sea of apathy.
Nice.
But that's stuff.
I like that. Very nice. Draw yourself a picture of a jellyfish in a sea of apathy. Go, go, go. All right, please.
It seems to me though that identity searching would be like a very natural, integral part of your maturity. So diffusion is really just a denial of it, right? I mean, it's not just not happening.
Right. Yeah, it's saying I'm actively not interested.
So there's something else going on, right? They don't like their choices, I would
it says
assume.
they recognize that they have choice, they just don't care to.
Yeah, so they may feel like they're trapped, that any choice they make isn't going to matter anyway, so I don't care. They may, if we tie it back to Erickson's theory, which we're going to be talking more about his theory and working through it in a minute, maybe they were never allowed to make their own choices previously. So in the initiative versus guilt stage, they were constantly told, no, you don't do it right, let me do it for you. Let me make those choices for you. And so then by adulthood, they're just like, well, it'll just take care of itself. It always does.
Could diffusion be considered a longer moratorium?
No.
Because
So,
it's not active searching.
Right. So moratorium is the state that is ideal for adolescents, right? We want them actively exploring their options, trying to figure stuff out. And that's what we do. Okay, as much as we say we're transmitting content, really, right, Rob? Really what we're trying to do is say, history, what do you think? Does this fit in with you and what you want to do? Is there stuff you could take away from my class that could affect the decisions you make and the things that you believe and the things you want to do and your opinions about stuff? That's what we're trying to do. Okay? Because as they become adults, they're going to take these pieces and they become a part of that story of themselves. So I really want you thinking about what are some opportunities within your discipline that you could take a hold of that would allow your students to explore some of these aspects of identity. Okay, now, obviously, number one, that's not really smiled upon for us to say, let's all explore our gender and sexual identity in my classroom. Okay? We get some interesting rules about the religious and spiritual beliefs in this country, in this state, right? You can have students, for example, in their history classes examine other religions, but not critique their own. That is not allowed, okay? But you can have them examine other religions and think about what would life be like, you know, those kinds of things, if I were part of that. But the rest of them, we should be actively pursuing this and allowing them a moratorium, okay? This is actually one of the reasons why we have seating charts, in class, the dreaded, hated seating charts, and the dreaded assigned groupings, right? But we do that in part because it allows them to meet other kids that have different beliefs, that have different opinions about stuff. And now they're in a situation where they have to talk with that student. And we can actually teach them how to not be passive aggressive, but discuss things openly and be able to disagree. We can do that. Okay, and that's a great step in helping them explore social identity as well as their opinions about a variety of other things. Okay? All right, so what I'd like you to do on this yellow sheet, you've likely been taking notes or just using it as a reference. I'd like you to try to put down an example from your own life or somebody that you know of each of these. So remember, diffusion is don't know, don't care. It's your druggy 38-year-old brother-in-law who's still sitting on the couch watching TV all day.
Wait, so do they realize then that they have choices there? It's just, is it much different from foreclosure? They just realize they have choices, they just don't care what.
Yeah, and they're not going to commit to anything. So if we think about kind of a, tell you what, on each one of these, okay, write yourself a symbol up in the top right corner. Let's do a little map key for a second. You're going to have a symbol for exploration, so maybe that's a pair of binoculars or something. And then you're going to have a symbol for commitment, whatever you want that to be. Okay, so one for exploration, one for commitment. Compass rose. Okay, then somewhere, like maybe in the top left or right corner, or whatever of each of these boxes, or bottom left or right corner, you could put which symbols belong with each state. Okay, so we wouldn't have any symbols in diffusion because there is no exploration and no commitment to anything. With identity foreclosure, we would not have a symbol for exploration, but we would for commitment. They've committed without over-exploring. Moratorium, we would have what? Exploration, but no commitment. Good. And then achievement? Both. Right. Okay, so now go ahead and put down your personal examples. Weston 1, Audrey 2, 3, Ashley 4, Jenny 5, Kyle, you're 6, just remember that, Brock, you're 7, Kristen 8, Carol 1, Caitlin 2, Tori 3, Bill 4, Mariah 5, Allison 6, Julie 7, Noel 8, Emily 1, Max 2. again, remember, you could actually be in all 4 of these right now. Just a different alphabet. Exactly right. Yep. Yeah, I don't think they'd be saying woo, or maybe that was an ah. Not sure. Those would be painful stairs to roll down. All right. So what we're gonna do with the number I gave you, we're gonna head out into the halls. We're gonna do what's called a walkabout, which is basically just we can walk around and learn instead of sitting here and learning. Okay, so we're gonna do a walkabout, and what we're gonna do with that, I gave you another yellow paper today, and that is focused on Erickson's psychosocial crises. So some of you I'm seeing have out also your bright orange timelines. If you have those with you today, pull those out for a minute. If you don't have them with you, that's okay. It's something that you can fill in. Well done.
And what we're doing right now, number 6. Okay, got it.
Out of 6.
Nice recovery. We won't turn it in until next year.
Okay, I just saw something that was a trend line on the thing that said not.
Yeah, there you go. Fix it. So we're changing when it's due.
Okay.
All right, so what you're going to do, take that timeline with you, take your yellow sheet with you, and then obviously you'll need a writing utensil. And if you want to take any notes with you, you can, okay? What we're going to do, out in the halls are posters that go along with each of Erickson's stages. Your number represents which stage you're starting with. So if you are a 1, you're going to start with trust versus mistrust, which if you go out of our classroom and turn to your right, it's on your right. Okay? 2, you're going to start with autonomy versus shame and doubt, 3, initiative, etc. Okay, so kind of count down your list to figure out which one you're going to start with. Your job, ready? Multi-step instructions. Assuming you're formal operational. Okay. All right. Your task with your group at your poster is to summarize it. Make sure you understand what the crisis is and what happens if it's resolved on the good side and what happens if it's resolved on the bad side. Okay, so everyone has a good and a bad side. Trust, good, mistrust, bad. Right? Then, see if you can think of a real example from your life, somebody that you know, whatever that you could use for this to help you remember it. Finally, we said last time that while the ages that are put on these are when they're of the utmost importance, we're always constantly going through these and we're always having to deal with these. So every single one of these has implications for the secondary classroom. Every single one. Okay? I said I was old earlier, but I'm not in the integrity versus despair stage quite yet. Okay? I'm pretty sure. But when I was teaching in rural Mexico, one of my jobs, so I taught at the telesecundaria, and then I also taught for the Mexican government, and I worked with basically everybody in the village had dropped out of school early, right, to work on the farms. And so I would go into their homes and teach them how to read and write and do basic math, all in Spanish and stuff, right? One of the girls that I taught had dropped out of school when she was like 2nd or 3rd grade. because her dad basically said straight to her face, "You're dumb as a rock. Don't bother." So she quit school and was just working at home doing chores. That's all she did. She was about 16 at this point. So he allowed me to come in and teach her. She wanted to be taught. So I went in and started teaching her how to read. And I would go in about once or twice a week and sit with her for about an hour. And he would come in constantly. "I don't know why you bother trying. She's an idiot. She can't learn anything. She's the stupidest person I've ever met in my life." You would say this right in front of her face, right? And I would be like, "Well, Nancy, she's doing well." I was 20, right? I was like shaking in my boots. Anyway, after a few, probably about 6 weeks or so, he came in and he was like, "You know what? This is taking up way too much of her time. She's not getting all of her chores done. I don't want you coming back here." So now, at this age, it's very easy for me to look back and say, I should have stood up to that guy. What was he going to do to me, right? Because I don't know how much you know about rural Mexican culture, but because I was a college student, I was called usted, which is like very respectful, like, "Oh, you're educated. We'll kind of defer to your opinion," right? That's part of the culture. So I was well respected in the town. I would have had support and things like that if I'd said, "No, I'm going to stay and I'm going to teach her." But I didn't. Okay? And that is something that I cannot, there's no way for me to go back and fix it. So that is an instance in my own life at a very young age where I experienced integrity versus despair, and I landed on that despair side. I knew better. I knew what I should have done to be true to who I am and what I wanted to have happen there, and I didn't do it, right? So those are the kinds of things, I mean, that's a big deal experience, but if we think about, we give tests to our kids with no second chance, that can be a despair moment as they realize, man, this one time I didn't study, and here I am failing my midterm, and there's no second chance. There goes my GPA. There goes my scholarship. There goes, right? Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you a few minutes at each poster. Remember, you're discussing what it is, so make sure you're all on the same page. Real life examples and ways it can be applied, used, helped, affect, whatever, the classroom environment. Okay, go, go, go. Woo! Salud. Ashley's got a good view of Joel's back right now.
Yes, she does. Yay. I'm not going to be able to write.
I will hit my singing bowl when it's time for you to
Ask
move.
the teacher to help you.
Yeah, you guys are going to have to help Audrey.
I'll write after.
Right after. Whatever you want to do.
Do you want us to like take turns holding it?
I don't care. Okay. Tolerate. Children need to focus on separation control.
Oh, that's from the other one.
Okay, what are we talking about again?
So examples from your own or someone else's life, and then applications to secondary classrooms. I can't think of any examples from me. These have examples of the time that you faced a need for physical skills and sense of independence.
I don't know, it's kind of like giving them chores at appropriate ages type of thing, like letting them choose to dress themselves and...
That's a good example.
Yeah.
Taking out the garbage, stuff like that. So this is, I I can't say this is completely true, but I heard once that little kids will suck their thumbs because they don't have enough like choices or whatever. It's like a body language sign or something, and it's not like obviously it can be different for everybody, but it's supposed to be like their thumb is their willpower, and so if they're sucking it, it's because they don't have enough choices.
Interesting.
So.
Alright. We do need to be a little careful because choice plays an even bigger role in initiative. So in this one, I would focus on kind of the power issue that I can do things myself, that I have control over my environment, kind of a thing. I can tie my own shoes, I can put on my own pants, that kind of stuff.
Well, in the Asian cultures, usually the parents tend to dominate over their children. They just do everything for their child, or they make choices for their children, and the children don't develop that autonomy, and so the children become very dependent on their parents. It's pretty common in Asian cultures.
Applications for a secondary classroom seem to be, like, especially for secondary, independence would be a really big one. Kind of letting them do things on their own without having to be specifically tied to like the teacher or even their peers. Like you need to give them the confidence to know that they can do this stuff on their own.
Not walking them through the steps every time.
I don't know. Do you guys have anything?
Do you want me to hold that while you write stuff?
Sure. That would be great.
I think we could. Sorry. I guess we can take.
Bam.
Now you're all about choice. Yes, being willing to take initiative, to come up with ideas and try new things.
I could be wrong, but isn't this where like the child wants to start feeding themselves instead of the parent feeding them, or that might be toddler?
That's going to be toddler.
That's going to be toddler.
This is about choice, she just said.
Right.
So it's...
And exerting your will over like the environment. So I don't know, being able to like change things around you in a bigger way, not just like do things on your own that you have to do anyway. I don't know.